Picture every self-help video you've ever watched about Stoicism. The calming music underneath, the slowly fading quotes, the warm, reassuring voice telling you that once you master your emotions, once you let go of what you can't control, once you practice gratitude in presence, your life is going to feel better. You're going to feel better. Here's what nobody is saying out loud, and what the Stoics themselves would find genuinely alarming about how their philosophy is being sold to you right now. Stoicism was never designed to make you feel better. It was designed to make you better, and those two things are not the same. In fact, and this is the part that most modern Stoic content carefully avoids, they frequently work against each other. The version of Stoicism being packaged and delivered to you on social media, on YouTube, in best-selling books with minimalist covers, it has been quietly, systematically stripped of every element that made it genuinely difficult. What's been left behind is something that feels like philosophy but functions like a comfort blanket. Something that uses ancient vocabulary to justify staying exactly where you are. And Marcus Aurelius would have despised it.
Welcome to Modern Stoicism. I'm going to say something in this video that I've been sitting on for a while because I knew it would be uncomfortable. But the longer I spend with the actual Stoic texts, not the quote cards, not the 15-second clips, the actual texts, the harder it becomes to stay quiet about this. We have turned one of history's most demanding philosophies into one of today's most comforting ones. And in doing so, we've lost the only part of it that actually worked.
Picture the way Stoicism gets presented in most content today. Someone's having a hard day. Their boss was unfair. Their relationship is struggling. They're anxious about money. And the Stoic advice, as it gets packaged now, is essentially, remember that you can't control outside events, only your reaction to them. Focus on what's in your control. Practice acceptance. Feel the peace that comes from letting go. This is not wrong exactly, but it is dangerously incomplete, because here's what that framing quietly does. It takes a philosophy that was originally built to push people toward radical personal transformation and turns it into a justification for inaction, for patience that never becomes progress, for acceptance that never becomes change. Epictetus didn't teach acceptance so that people would feel more comfortable staying in situations they should be leaving. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations to help people sleep better at night while avoiding the difficult work their lives were calling them to do. Seneca didn't spend his final years writing about time and urgency so that his readers could learn to be more at peace with wasting it. The Stoics were not comforting people. They were challenging them. Frequently, they were confronting them. And the modern version of this philosophy has almost entirely lost that confrontational edge, because confrontation doesn't get likes. Comfort does. Picture Marcus Aurelius, not as the wise, serene philosopher king that modern content makes him into, but as the human being who wrote the meditations. A man who was exhausted, who doubted himself, who was surrounded by people he couldn't fully trust, who was dealing with the plague, multiple wars, and the grief of watching his children die. A man who, on more mornings than we'd like to admit, did not feel like getting up and doing what the day required. And what did he write to himself on those mornings? He wrote, "Stop drifting. Stop letting your impulses rule you. Stop pretending that a life of wandering, of taking the easy path, of avoiding the difficult thing, that this is acceptable for a person who claims to value virtue." He was not gentle with himself. He was ruthless. Compassionate in the sense that he didn't hate himself for struggling, but completely unsparing in his refusal to use struggle as an excuse for not continuing. That is not the tone of modern Stoic content. Modern Stoic content sounds like this. Be kind to yourself. You're doing your best. Accept where you are. Trust the process. Marcus Aurelius's actual tone sounded more like this. You have been given a mind. Use it. You have been given time. Do not waste it. You have been given a life of purpose, and you are spending it on distractions that would embarrass the person you are trying to become. Which of those two things is more likely to change your actual behavior? Which of those two things respects you enough to hold you to a real standard? Here is the most dangerous misuse of Stoic philosophy that I see repeated across thousands of pieces of content, in comment sections, in conversations. The idea that Stoic acceptance means accepting your circumstances as they are. It does not, and this distinction matters enormously. The Stoics taught acceptance of what genuinely cannot be changed: the past, the actions of other people, the fact of mortality. They were very specific about the category of things that fall into this bucket, and they were equally specific about the category of things that do not: your effort, your choices, your discipline, your character, the direction of your own life. But somewhere in the translation from ancient philosophy to modern social media, those two categories got collapsed into one. Everything became something to accept. Every difficult situation became an invitation to practice equanimity rather than an invitation to do something different. The philosophy of disciplined action became, somehow, a philosophy of patient stillness. Picture someone in a job that is genuinely wrong for them, the wrong environment, the wrong values, the wrong use of their actual capabilities, and they spend 2 years practicing Stoic acceptance of their situation, reframing their frustration as something to master rather than something to act on. Meanwhile, the window during which they could have made the move that would have changed the trajectory of their career is quietly closing. That is not Stoicism. That is Stoicism's vocabulary being used to justify fear of change. And there is a real, important difference between those two things. Epictetus was explicit about this. The dichotomy of control was never meant to produce passivity. It was meant to produce clarity. Clarity about exactly which parts of any situation deserve your full energy and which parts you should stop wasting it on. The answer was always to pour that energy into action, into character, into the things that were genuinely yours to shape, not to accept the whole picture as fixed. Here's a principle the Stoics held that has almost completely disappeared from modern Stoic content. They believed that a comfortable life, a life that prioritizes ease, pleasure, the absence of friction, was not just suboptimal. It was actively corrosive to character. This is not a popular thing to say, but it is unambiguously what they taught. Cato the Younger, the man Stoics throughout history have held up as the clearest embodiment of Stoic virtue, was famous for living in ways that were deliberately harder than they needed to be. He would walk long distances in full sun when he could have ridden. He would wear clothing that was considered unfashionable and coarse when his social position entitled him to much better. Not because he was performing poverty or suffering for its own sake, but because he understood something that modern comfort culture has almost completely forgotten. The more you protect yourself from discomfort, the smaller your capacity for discomfort becomes. And the smaller your capacity for discomfort, the smaller your capacity for everything that requires it. Courage, discipline, honesty, the willingness to do the right thing when the right thing is also the hard thing. Modern life is architected almost entirely around the elimination of discomfort. Every friction in your day has an app designed to remove it. Every boredom has a feed designed to fill it. Every difficult conversation has a way of being avoided. Every hard decision a way of being deferred. And into this environment comes a version of Stoicism that says, practice acceptance. Find your inner peace. Let go of what you can't control. It doesn't challenge the comfort. It provides a philosophical framework for feeling at peace inside it. And that is precisely where it fails. Let me be specific about something, because I want this to land in your actual life rather than stay as an abstract critique. Picture the typical Stoic morning routine as it gets described in this space. Wake up early, journal, read a few pages of the meditations, set your intention for the day, practice gratitude, spend some time in silence, then go about your life. There is nothing wrong with any of these individual practices, but here is the question Marcus Aurelius would ask about that routine. What is it actually changing? At the end of 30 days of journaling, of gratitude, of morning silence, Are you doing anything different? Are you doing anything harder? Are you closer to the person you are trying to become? Or are you simply more at peace with the distance between that person and the one you currently are? Because there is a version of every Stoic practice that becomes a way of feeling like you're working on yourself while carefully avoiding the actual work. Journaling about your values without changing your behavior. Reading about discipline without practicing it. Writing about courage every morning before spending the day in comfortable avoidance of every situation that would actually require it. Marcus Aurelius called this out in his own writing: the person who speaks philosophy beautifully and lives it not at all. He considered it worse than ignorance, because at least the ignorant person has the excuse of not knowing better. The person who has read the philosophy, who quotes it fluently, who has made it part of their identity, and then doesn't live it, has chosen something more culpable than ignorance. They have chosen performance over practice. Here is another pattern worth naming directly. There are certain kinds of pain that Stoicism is genuinely designed to help with. The pain of loss, the anxiety of uncertainty, the frustration of other people's behavior, the fear of death. For all of these, things that are genuinely outside your control, Stoic practice is exactly the right tool. Learn to accept them. Don't let them steal your present moment. Find the equanimity that lets you keep functioning and keep growing despite them. But there is another category of pain that exists specifically because you are not living in alignment with who you know you're supposed to be. Pain that comes from a life too small, from potential unused, from choices made repeatedly out of fear or comfort rather than genuine conviction. This kind of pain is not something to practice Stoic acceptance about. This is not the universe testing your equanimity. This is the most important signal your life sends you, and it deserves to be listened to rather than managed. The Stoics called this signal the voice of your daimon, the inner guide, the deeper self, the part of you that knows what you're actually for and keeps sending up flares when you drift too far from it. And they were clear that the appropriate response to that signal was not acceptance. It was action, correction, a return to the path you'd abandoned. Modern Stoicism has gotten very good at helping people feel calm. It has gotten very bad at helping people distinguish between the kind of discomfort that should be accepted and the kind that should be acted on. And that distinction is, arguably, the most important thing in the entire philosophy. Picture Epictetus standing in front of a room full of students, some of them from wealthy Roman families, some of them expecting a philosophy that would help them navigate their comfortable lives with more grace and ease. And he opens with something that must have landed in that room like a thrown stone. He said, "If you want to be a philosopher, prepare to be laughed at. Prepare to be told you are out of your mind. Prepare for people you respect to think less of you. Prepare for the possibility that the life this philosophy calls you toward will look strange, even wrong, to most of the people around you. This is not the opening pitch of a philosophy designed to make you feel better about your current life. This is the opening pitch of a philosophy that is openly, unapologetically telling you that your current life might need to change significantly, and that the people around you might not like it when it does." The Stoics were asking for everything. They were asking for a complete reorientation of what you value, what you pursue, what you consider success, how you spend your time, who you spend it with, what you're willing to sacrifice, and what you're not. They were asking you to hold yourself to a standard that most people around you would not be holding themselves to, and to do it without needing their approval or their understanding. That is not comfortable. It was never supposed to be. I want to be clear that this is not an argument against Stoicism. It is an argument for the actual version of it, rather than the comfortable facsimile that gets sold today. Real Stoic practice looks like doing the hard thing you've been avoiding, specifically because you've been avoiding it. It looks like having the conversation you've been putting off, making the decision you've been deferring, leaving the situation you've been accepting that you should have left months ago. It looks like holding yourself to a standard in private that you don't perform for anyone. It looks like catching yourself taking the easy path and choosing the harder one not because you enjoy suffering, but because you understand what easy paths compound into over 10 years. It looks like reading Marcus Aurelius not to feel inspired, but to be confronted, to sit with the discomfort of recognizing that the gap between how he challenged himself and how gently you've been challenging yourself is real and significant and worth doing something about. It looks like understanding that the whole point of this philosophy, the entire project of 2,000 years of Stoic thought, was never to help you feel at peace with who you are. It was to help you become who you are capable of being. And those are sometimes very different destinations. I'll end with something Marcus Aurelius wrote that almost never appears in the modern Stoic content, precisely because it isn't comforting. He wrote, "How many a Fabius, a Scipio, a Caesar, and Augustus, men who governed empires, who had the resources of whole nations, have now been swallowed up by time. Think of the doctors who scowled so portentously and then died, the astrologers who predicted others' ends and met their own, the philosophers who wrote so learnedly of death or immortality, the great commanders who killed thousands, the tyrants who wielded power of life and death with such arrogance, the whole cities that have perished, Hellas, Pompeii, Herculaneum, all gone, all become dust." He wrote that not to depress himself. He wrote that to force himself awake, to refuse the comfortable lie that there was still time to begin living the way he knew he should be living, to make the urgency real enough that it would actually change his behavior today, not someday when conditions were better or the motivation arrived. That is the version of Stoicism I want to offer you. Not a comfort, not a permission structure for staying where you are and feeling philosophical about it. A challenge, an honest, sometimes uncomfortable, 2,000-year-old challenge to become the person that your own life is calling you to be, before the time to do it is gone. The Stoics didn't promise it would feel good. They promised it would be worth it. And everything they wrote, everything they lived, suggests that promise still holds. If this video made you uncomfortable, that was intentional. Drop a comment and tell me honestly, which part of this landed closest to something you've been avoiding thinking about? I read every one. If you know someone who has been using Stoicism as a comfort blanket rather than a compass, share this with them. Not to challenge them publicly, just to offer them the version of this philosophy that might actually change something. Subscribe to Modern Stoicism for more of this. We don't do comfortable here, we do honest. Until next time, go do the hard thing. You already know what it is.